Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Tuesday. It's February 18th of 2025. Today is day 501 since October 7th of 2023. Today is the day that the Hezbollah-Israel ceasefire is set to expire, where Hezbollah is supposed to withdraw from north of the Litani River in Lebanon, and Israel is supposed to withdraw completely south of the Lebanese border. Israeli troops have said that they will withdraw except for 5 specific locations in South Lebanon after today's deadline for their withdrawal elapses. They've said that they are doing so in coordination with approval from the United States. Israel yesterday killed a Hamas leader in South Lebanon's Sidon area, and the Israeli military and a Hamas official have said. In terms of the Israel-Hamas war, Hamas will not disarm and will regroup in Gaza, according to a Hamas spokesperson and a political bureau member. They announced that this weekend, seemingly contradicting an earlier statement by a different Hamas spokesperson that said that the group is not seeking to cling to power. That was reported over the weekend by CNN. And Israel is preparing to receive bodies of 4 different hostages from Gaza on Thursday of this week. That they're working to secure the release of 6 living captives this coming Saturday, according to an Israeli security official. A former Palestinian detainee released by Israel this past Saturday said that he was subjected to both torture and hunger while he was in prison, a claim that's been rejected by the Israeli military. And Netanyahu has shifted who's leading the Israeli negotiating team in continued negotiations in terms of hostage and ceasefire discussions. He's removing the Mossad chief, David Barnea, and the Shin Bet chief, Ronen Bar, from Israel's hostage negotiation team today, Tuesday, and instead appointing the Strategic Affairs Minister, Ron Dermer, to lead the talks. Other officials from other agencies will replace them, including a former deputy Shin Bet chief who's already participated in previous negotiations. Sources have said that Dermer's appointment follows the U.S. administration's increased involvement in the talks, and that Dermer is managing Netanyahu's outreach to President Trump and his circle, and he will now handle communications with the Middle East envoy Stephen Witkoff instead of Barnea. A diplomatic source has called the move the politicization of negotiations, saying that the shift is moving control away from professionals and could disrupt the release of the remaining hostages. Israeli families of the 6 living hostages who are set to be released on Saturday have been notified. One of the hostages, Abera Mengitsu, is the longest held living Israeli hostage. In what his family says was a state of mental instability, he scaled the security barrier in 2014 and entered into Gaza, where he was then questioned by Hamas. He was held for 10 years in the Gaza Strip. Hisham al-Sayed ranks as the second among the longest held living Israeli hostages in the Gaza Strip. Al-Sayed suffers from schizophrenia, and he entered Gaza in 2015 and then was captured by Hamas. Al-Sayed is from Hura in the South Negev in Israel. He is from a Bedouin tribe, the Al-Sayed tribe. Hamas has said that they're willing to enter into negotiations immediately regarding the next stage of the ceasefire. They're blaming Israel for evading the matter. In U.S. Foreign Affairs, Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff have met with Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. That happened yesterday. They were discussing not only Gaza, but also the Ukraine conflict, according to the State Department. And Israel's ongoing military campaign has triggered the most significant displacement of Palestinians since the 1967 Six-Day War. This is the most significant displacement of Palestinians from the occupied West Bank since 1967, according to both experts that are Palestinian and Israeli. I wanted to just take a minute and suggest, if you're interested in learning more about some of the things that have been happening, I wanted to suggest just a couple of books. Amir Tibon has been a correspondent for Haaretz. He actually was here in Washington, D.C. He wrote a book called The Gates of Gaza, a story of betrayals, survival, and the hope of Israel's borderlands. Amir Tibon not only was a correspondent here in Washington, D.C., but he was a part of the October 7th attacks. And so this is a book from an Israeli perspective about the October 7th attacks called The Gates of Gaza. The Abraham Accords by Elham Fakaro, the Gulf States, Israel, and the Limits of Normalization. I wanted to recommend as reading. These are, of course, not comprehensive by any means. And book clubs are great things that you can do in your communities. Churches for Middle East Peace has a curriculum. The Network of Evangelicals for the Middle East has a theological curriculum I'd recommend. And this book has been recommended many, many times. Rise and Kill First, The Secret History of Israel's Targeted Assassinations. It's a bit of an older book, but many people have recommended it. I've only just started it as a book talking about Israeli strategy, which is very, very relevant considering Israel's response to Hezbollah and Hamas in the past year or so. Upcoming events for Churches for Middle East Peace. We've been traveling on our Pilgrimage to Peace tour to Colorado and to Texas. The first week of March, we'll be traveling in the Southeast, North Carolina, Atlanta, and Orlando. We'd invite you to join us in Washington, D.C. for our National Advocacy Summit here on March 19th and 20th. And we're hosting, alongside of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America and other partners, Reverend Dr. Munther Itzhak here in D.C. on April 1st and 2nd, launching his new book, which will be traveling around the U.S. to do so, entitled Christ in the Rubble. So those are just some ways that you can get involved and stay engaged as we seek to call for a comprehensive and permanent ceasefire in these days of seeking peace and permanent and comprehensive and lasting solutions after 501 days of such unrest and devastation. May God go before us as we seek to follow him. In the name of Christ, amen.